And the man and the legend has joined us, Mr. Joshua. Unfortunately, guys, Av is having a little bit of a stomach issue. I think he had too much cake at the birthday party yesterday, but we're going to give him a break. He might jump on. We'll see how he feels. But I'm going to turn this over to Leighton, who is a great friend of Joshua. And guys, take it away. I'm going to jump back in the background.
Thanks, Ken, for everything as always, and welcome, my friend. Let's dive right in. So I usually try to open with getting the guest to talk a little bit about their past and how they ended up getting here.
Yeah, right. Well, I was telling Ken, first of all, he makes me sound so epic. I'm just a guy, but I'll explain. It's all intention, right? Like some of the reels, about the suede satchel or the leather satchel. That's real. Like when I was a kid, probably around first grade, if I had to think about it or something like that, I would wear this Native American satchel. It was like beaded and beaded suede satchel around my neck, and I had sage in it. And I would tell people, when I grow up, I want to be a medicine man. Dead serious too. And like I probably at one point, like, don't criticize me, but would say I want to be an Indian. That was before like that was considered non-correct. But to me, it was a term of endearment, right? Like that was what I was like, I hate to bust it to you, buddy, but some things you just can't be. But a medicine man, I am, right? And I'll get there. In many ways, to me, it means like through validation, not because of self-accreditation or anything like that. I'm proclaiming these things. So I appreciate you, Ken. I also just, I think I'm just doing the work. But it wasn't that like my entire life I dreamed of being a medicine man. It was like a kid, and then some dash of reality jumps in there when you're in school. And I thought I wanted to like own a psychology practice or something at some point in time, and like some real world jobs, right? Or careers rather. And then I think somehow in my adult life, I was laying carpet and talking to, people I would call homies at the time, about like, isn't there some, my brother was in prison and he passed away in prison, and because of pharmaceuticals, I guess is the short way to say that. He was on antidepressants and took too many, but so in my mind, I was 20 at the time, I think, and 21 maybe, and thinking, really just not around like influential people that I am now, or positive people, I guess you would say, and no judgment. Like these are, I don't mean judgment to anybody. It's just, you got to do what you, dream bigger and better for yourself. So I'm glad I'm not in that position anymore with those people anymore. And I mean, none of them harm, but anyway, I was asking, like, hey, isn't there like a real medicine man or something? And thankfully, one of my friends, who must have been more educated than the rest of us, said, I think there's something called a naturopath. And I was like, oh, okay, right on, a naturopath. That sounds groovy. And then maybe another year went by. I had met my son's mom, and we were pregnant, and like, dude, we were expecting my son, who's now 14. And he was a December baby. So I'm from Omaha, and this is where it's all taking place. Omaha and a December baby is not something I wanted to deal with, meaning snow and cold. So like, let's go to Arizona. She had better support, I think, at the time, like parents and things like that, familial support. And so it just made sense that we would go down to Arizona, and all this other stuff was kind of out of my mind, right? Naturopath was just like a come and go thing. And then I had this urge, I guess, to go to school or something. We were like, what are we doing? Right. That kind of whole, like, what are we going to do? And I was sitting at home with my newborn son at the time, and looking at some like flyer for the Southwest Institute of Healing Arts, or rather not a flyer for it. It was in the nickel, whatever the free paper was. I don't even know why I had one of those, but it was just this little corner ad. And then it had something about herbalism and holistic nutrition. And I was like really vibing with it, right? Like we were already kind of organic is better sort of thing, like not fully versed in all of that, but just kind of like a little bit aware. And then, so yeah, I enrolled and started going down this path. I studied herbalism and holistic nutrition for 2 years at SWIHA, or Southwest Institute of Healing Arts. And just my quick thought process doing that was, I wanted to go to school to be an herbal clinic, or a clinical herbalist, right? Like I wanted to be more like a folk herbalist, not like a full on like white coat herbalist, but like folk herbalist, have an herb shop, apothecary kind of thing behind me, and have folks come in with their ailment and I give them their remedy. So I studied herbalism in the first part of my studies, right? In the first year. The second part of the year, I studied holistic nutrition. And I'm so thankful that it came this way, because we took a field trip for my herbalism class. And I'm very close friends with my herbalism teacher to this day. This was in 2009. So we've remained friends she's one of my longest standing friends, put it that way. But anyway, so we went on this field trip to these 3 farms, or 3 gardens rather, and the philosophies of them were kind of varying, but one of them really stuck out to me at Maya's farm. And so I felt compelled, even though there were no job openings, to apply at Maya's farm by just writing a letter and inquiring, I'm like, hey, can I come work here? And she said, yeah. It was everything I needed. And I don't want to talk about manifestation too much on here, but I've always kind of lived my life fringe intention. And I do understand manifesting, but I don't go down that full, what is it? The secret, I don't live my life that way. I'm not saying, I just don't know as much about it as maybe I should. So I don't dabble in it, but I understand intention. So I got a job at Maya's farm because I wanted one, right? Is where I'm going with that. And then Maya's farm is really where I got that whole concept of food as medicine. Being around herbs and things like that is like, I really wanted to be around the environment, the soil, the compost. It was like, I liked it when I was a kid, being in the dirt, and we had a small garden, but always being in the dirt and running in the forest or stuff like that, like the little forest that we had in the neighborhood. But being at Maya's, like these things started evolving in my brain about food is medicine, from herbs to our medicine to food is medicine. And like, I went from thinking really quickly, like I want to be a clinical herbalist, to I want to grow herbs for herbalists, because I was realizing that, things are being shipped across the country. And as far as like nutritional density in herbs or freshness, anything like that, it's like, it a lot of times comes down to freshness, right? And like the miles traveled. And I guess so, well, I'll get back to this in a second, but I thought that was a void that needed filled, right? I'm like, oh wow, I can grow fresh herbs for the herbalist. Like this is fantastic. And then my mind, as I gained in or went more into my nutrition classes, evolved into food as medicine, and really just like full on gardening. Like why herbs? Like herbs are food and should be essentially supplemental. But my very first class at SWIHA, and I need to back up a little bit too, even before all this, but my very first class at SWIHA was Ayurveda. And so I won't go down the path of Ayurveda necessarily to get down that rabbit hole, but it's a really fantastic, holistic modality. And where I'm going with that is your diet entails what you're consuming, which is what you're watching, what you're hearing also, right? Not just what you're eating and drinking, what you're consuming, right? What's going in you. The issues are in the tissues, they say, right? So what you think and feel is responsive to a lot of times your environment that you're subjecting yourself to. And I, again, like mean nothing about the people I moved away from, but it's like I knew better than them, and I wanted something different than them, right? I know that they're stuck in the same spot. I'm not. Anyway, in my last 2 years of high school, I reluctantly at the time, but I'm blessed to have now moved to Germany, and went to an American defense school. So like I was in an American school, thankfully, and all that, but like we were in a German neighborhood. I lived off base in a village and was witness to a lot of cultural holisticness again, connectedness, community, and like it really just got my mind thinking in certain ways. Plus, being really close to Amsterdam, the ganja was strong, and so I think that had something to do with my mind thinking a lot too. But and the hashish, right, like Turkish hash. But I was smoking one night. You know, I was either a junior and senior in high school, so I should not have been smoking at night. But I was up in my room, which was like, you know, this 2-story. Well, it had a basement too, so it was actually like 4 stories. But I was in the very top, the loft, right, like it was my room, and I was blowing the smoke out the window, and I watched my dog eat grass. So it must have been in the daytime when I was smoking in the daytime, whatever. Watching my dog eat grass, and like just intrinsic lateral thought to like, well, how the hell does a dog, all dogs know to eat grass, like when their belly hurts? And this is River, of course, chanting away over here. How do they all know to eat grass when their belly hurts, right? And I was like, because we didn't have TED Talks at this time, like this is in 2003, I think. And but it's like they didn't have seminars, is what I told myself, right? There's no dog seminars that all dogs are like, and remember, like it's they speak frequency, right? Like they inherently know that, like they almost, I feel like, sense and see vibrations that we don't. And so like all this led down some other metaphysical shit that I like maintained for the rest of the night. But anyway, so my mind has always been thinking holistically and laterally, and I do really attribute a lot of that to cannabis. But it's also my medicine. It's been my medicine for a long, long time, in a multitude of ways. So, but yeah, anyway, Sweeha is what got me into really growing food. Working at Maya's farm, I went from Maya's farm to a college. I got a job offer at a sustainable foods program that was kind of like kicking off the ground. It was in Tempe, and that was Rio Salado College. It's an online college, but they're hybrid classes, so I was a hybrid instructor at the time. But I was hired on as just the garden builder. I was just building the garden. There was a different instructor, so that was frustrating. That, like, you know, it's like, whose turf is it? And like, but anyway, because they would do shit a different way, right? Like they would come in with the heavy guns, like the fertilizer and stuff, and I'm like, you know, you can just use water and time, like patience, you know, to wake the biology up. There's plenty of organic matter. And anyway, it's just one of those things that thankfully, like, they got frustrated enough, moved along. I got the full scale job on faculty. I was probably there 5 years or so. And then really like took my retirement, like that I was building up, the Arizona State retirement. I was like, hey man, I got like 14 grand. This is great. I'm going to fucking retire when I'm 24. And so like I cashed out on it, like put this lump, like, I don't know, I think 6 months of rent, out to pay 6 months of rent, and paid off my insurance for 6 months. I paid all my bills off for 6 months. Right. And like just started working on my farm. My farm at the time was a cooperation of, or rather an agreement that I had. There was this vacant lot that is now the Welcome Diner in Phoenix. It's a really cool spot to eat at and all that, but it was a 3rd-acre parcel that I had kind of for the past few years dreamt about when I drove by. Like, I'm like, oh, someone's growing lettuce here. Someone's doing something here. Like, it looked ag, right? And I was like, but right in the middle of the city. I mean, in the barrios, like shootouts barrios, right? Like, it's like the ghetto here. And like, so I was like, man, this is a freaking awesome little garden someone's doing here. And then I finally, like, just through odd circles, concentric circles. And at the time I hadn't known that we had already met and talked and everything. But the owner of this property and I finally linked up because they were getting citations from the city, right? Because of weeds and all that, right? As soon as you're on the city radar, you're on the radar. The county comes by and like, they're like, oh, weeds, oh, mulch, oh, this, oh, that. And like, so they essentially needed a compliance guy. And what my deal was, is I got to farm this 3rd acre for free. I paid the meter, which they offered to pay the meter, but I thought that was kind of like, you know, I can pay the water. Water's ridiculously cheap in Arizona. Phoenix city water, first of all, should not be that. Never mind. So it's ridiculously cheap. And like, so I paid the meter. It actually had 2 meters, but I paid both of those. I only ever used one, but and like essentially kept this guy out of court. I went to court with him twice because I had dropped off loads of mulch, And the city didn't like that. And I'm like, no, hold on. Like what I'm doing is actually good. And I had to go to court and like argue for mulch, right? Like how I was going to fight the weeds. I was retaining water, like carbon sink, like stuff that they didn't even give a shit about. But I was like, yo, don't touch my freaking mulch, right? Because I've had people like come overnight with a tractor and take your mulch too. And I'm like, are you effing serious right now? Like, so anyway, free mulch is easy to get in Phoenix. It's not necessarily easy to keep in Phoenix. It's really hard to get up here though, where I am right south at Cornville. It's like gold up here. Thankfully, everybody knows its value and it's hard to come by up here. But so I had this little 3rd acre I was farming for free. And then essentially like that came to its end because I knew Welcome Diner was taking over. And essentially that came down to they were going to pay money, right? Like I would give this dude vegetables and stuff. And like I was literally 3 blocks from the farmer's market at this parcel that I sold at, right? Like my heart of the downtown Phoenix farmer's market. So like we were known, man, Cocoa Paw Gardens at the time, because this garden was on, I lived on Cocoa Paw Street. But anyway, I knew it was coming to an end. They started poking and prodding around for doing foundation work and stuff. And I'm all like, whoa, what happened to my melon? Like, like things like that, like construction guys come around and like all of a sudden, anyway, so I was like, look, I'm going to go ahead and peace out. It's been fun. And so like I got out of there. I had another acre and some change that we were farming that was also free. So that was our concept. We were finding vacant land and we were farming it. We were essentially profit farmers, so say what you will, but we were, selling at 5 different farmers markets a week in our heyday. Cocoa Paw Gardens was, and DBA Community Roots now, that kind of thing is really what it is. But and essentially, like I tell this story, like I get teared up when I tell it usually, but I won't this time. I'll try not to. Like I was harvesting roselle, right? Like on our 3rd acre, we called it the perf lot, the Phoenix Urban Research Farm. But we had a bunch of roselle planted, like probably 60 plants. If you're not familiar with roselle, it's like okra. It's the cousin of okra, right? So its structure is large. It yields a lot of buds. But we were harvesting it the weekend before Thanksgiving, the market before Thanksgiving. And we knew that we were going to like make a bunch of money on this because like it's the Arizona cranberry, we were calling it. Like we were marketing it hot and we were selling it. They're delicious. It's what you make hibiscus tea from, or jamaica, right? Jamaica tea. Am I saying that right? Yeah. Not horchata, jamaica. Like when you go to the burrito restaurants and they have like the red drink and the white drink, jamaica, horchata, it's what you make jamaica from. It's hibiscus. Anyway, so I'm sitting here harvesting it, like just going nuts, right? Bam, 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 like just dollars in my head. And all of a sudden around the back of the stem, I feel this little difference, and it's a leaf hopper, like one of those really cool neon green and blue and red ones. Like, of course, they're plant damaging, like they're eating my plants, and like probably people are like, yeah, whatever, fuck that thing. But it didn't sit well with me, man. I wasn't there to we don't use pesticides. Like we didn't do that. We aren't about that. Like let something eat it, right? Like that's what we're about. Find something to eat what's eating your stuff or whatever. Anyway, the reason it didn't sit well with me because my intention wasn't in line with nature at the time. I was mining, right? I was just straight mining at the time, and it wasn't cool. And like I hadn't killed it right at the time. It like just got mangled, and I felt real bad because it was like kind of like just sitting there like messed up. And they're intelligent too, by the way. Like if you ever see them on a stem, like I'm virtually holding a stem between me and it, they move around. Like when you try to look at them, you know what I mean? Like they move like that. It's weird. They're smart. But anyway, it didn't sit well with me. Like I literally was like, dude, I'm done. I think that was one of our last markets. I might have had a week left. My motor and my blazer blew. Like bad stuff started happening. I was like, bro, I got to go back to work. I'm not doing this anymore. And I'm saying we, and bro, it was my partner at the time. Like, dude, we were cool. We rolled on everything. We were like, it was cool what we did, how we did it. Like we were known. We were also just like, come see our plots. We're miles from our markets, less than miles from our markets. We don't spray anything. We don't even have a shed to spray it. Literally mulch instead of water if I had to choose, right? And in Phoenix, and I mean, the proof was in the pudding. We had people come to our farms. But anyway, That killing the leafhopper messed me up. I was like, dude, this isn't a hobby for me anymore. It really just kind of took away. So I started going back to work. I was already moonlighting, like, cause I had still worked at the college, but I stepped away from teaching. I was like kind of part-timing in the garden there. But I was moonlighting, working at Leslie's pools with my brother. Like he wasn't supposed to have like a side guy, but I was like always, I'd wear his shirts. So it was like two Brads would show up. It was like, got a couple of Brads here. And, that's funny. But like, so I'm like, bro, let me get into pools, right? I make good money. And like, it's all chemicals though, man. Like it's such a death market. I hated it. I made good money. Sure. I hated it. But I'd find myself walking around someone's backyard and I'm like, oh dude, nice bell peppers. And like, I love your mulch, you know? I'm like, oh, cool. You let your jalapenos get red. That's what's up, you know? Like geeking on people's gardens. And, it was the writing's always on the wall for me. Like when the time's there to move, you know, I tell Leighton, I'm like, the numbers are high, you know, like when I see like synergy and stuff, like I know when it's time to move and time to kind of like groove and lay low or whatever. But anyway, so I started working in schools. When I went back, like when I left work and was like, after looking at everyone's gardens, I'm like, you know, what am I going to do? I went back to one of my buddies, aquaponics at the time. Riba Farms was pretty well known here, and they were doing commercial aquaponics. And so when I was teaching at the college, we went and toured Mark's facility. And so we remained buddies. And when I left there, I was like, dude, I'm just going crazy, bro. I got to get my hands back in the dirt. I don't care like what you got for me. I'm just down. Right. And like, so I just started working. We were doing microgreens. We had 1,000 square foot indoor grow where we were just doing micros, organic, certified organic micros, wheatgrass, peas, and why am I blanking right now? Just microgreens, sunflowers. Anyway, so I did that, you know, for I don't know how many years with Mark, but I ended up being the farm manager before leaving there and like helping them when we moved facilities. Like that was a big deal. Like we moved to a completely different facility, like into a different county and like recertified with organic and GIP-GAP certification. So like that was experiential for sure, but it was also one of those things where I'm like, I'm just not with the rigidity, you know, I'm just not. And I appreciate all the like Yuma, Arizona grows like over 60% of the country's greens, lettuce, right? So I appreciate the commercial scale. I get it. Like even a guy like me that grows my food or my cannabis, whatever it is, like self-sufficiency is really hard. It's really hard. So I'm like, I appreciate the commercial scale and the people doing things. And I understand like the things like the Food Safety Modernization Act or whatever I think it was that I had. That was the last certification our farm did. And I was like, deuces, I'm out, bro. This is some weird ass shit, you know? I get it. But at the same time, I'm like, bro, it's food. We're talking about plants. Like we're acting like human species hasn't freaking traveled millennia to get here. You know what I mean? Like all of a sudden food is dangerous and all this. I'm like, no, what's dangerous is corporate profitism and all this other like protecting profits, packaging things, putting it in plastics, you know, rigidity. You're sterilizing things and you didn't do it right. Now you've bred a super bacteria, you know. So I don't know what the answer is. I'm not saying that it's wrong to feed America or feed the masses, but I will say the issue is not food production, it's distribution, right? And that's always been the case. But on that note, like a book that I love so much, Ishmael, that I talk about a lot, does talk about this. And like as far as the overpopulation and how I'm not going to get into population control. Like, don't get me wrong. That's not where I'm going. That's there's some ridiculous theories out there on how we should be doing this, but I am saying we're breaking a law. We are breaking a natural law that's called the law of competition, or the law of limited competition, or the peacekeeper law, by creating these sterile environments or these sterile outcomes, these intended outcomes that have no robust filter to them by, by killing the coyote to raise more deer. We're not doing good. You know, when we remove apex predators, I don't want to tell that whole story. I do really like how it goes, but it's called The Lion and the Hyena, and it's written in Ishmael by David Quinn, who's actually from Omaha, so I like that too. But you can't remove a single species without it affecting the entire ecology of all the species, and that's just a fact. And so like the thing is, when we think that, you know, we're going to spray weed killer in order to grow this monoculture stronger because it's got a glyphosate inherent or intelligent gene factor that it can outwithstand it, it's like, okay, dude, hindsight's 2020. And I'm not saying, you know, I'm not pro GMO. I just don't think that that's our move to be making. Personally, I think that's a little too far down the rabbit hole. But that's just me. You know, I'm not a lab coat wearing guy. I'm out in the dirt. I eat my finger. I don't eat them, but I bite my fingernails. You shouldn't eat your fingernails, probably. That's not good. But I'm not scared of dirt. I mean, but I also tell Leighton this, you know, like half of these books, I wish I had read cover to cover, and that's not all of our books. Like that's not even a smidge of our books. But at the same time, I'm just out in the dirt all the time, right? Like looking at the bugs, like watching them, observing them, communing with them. And I think that that's more important a lot of times, you know, just the fact that we just have to do it, do the work and get in there and play in leaf litter. But so I'm almost done with my intro as far as like, but I had to say something. There's as far as, because we've been going through flooding here like crazy, and Leighton knows this, and I'm trying to get work done right now on the creek, and it's like incredibly difficult. And it always comes back to reminding myself it's not just a property like this, but a property like this has taught me a lot. And I didn't come to a property like this until 12 years after growing food professionally, in a sense, right? Like until I was paying my rent with gardens. I've done that for 12 plus years, and now I have this property. So I'm not new to growing or being around dirt or any. It's like but you get to a place like this and you're like, okay, what do I do? Right? Like you're gonna do stuff, and it's like there's also forces in nature, and nature is my boss, and I always know that. But now thank you. I live on that creek, and that creek moves things. So we're removing a lot of the arondo, which my intention, and before I forget to say it, it's intention over attachment. That's what I'm getting at. I operate in intention, and it's not because attachment doesn't hurt me. If I look out my window right now, I see one willow tree that fell last night, and it has a 16-inch circumference. I mean, diameter. Right? Like that's a lot. A 16-inch diameter, and then its roots lifted up another one that has another 16-inch diameter. It's gonna go, and not before it falls into another one that's leaning. Those will be my 6th big trees that my intention was to remove reeds so that they weren't getting choked out, so that they had more light, because this reed is a quote invasive species, unlike humans, right? Tongue in cheek there. But it's a quote invasive species, and I've told Leighton all about how amazing this biological thing is, how it is on the creek, what it does for the creek, the biology that it, you know, so the flora and fauna here aren't benefiting from it. I get that, and to me that was important. I'm not just casting that off. Like I love my mule deer, I love the otter, I love the black hawk. And before I get to it, my window of time is April 15th to September 30th is a no work window for me because of the swiffle and the yellow-billed cuckoo, right? There's nesting grounds that are down there, and I've seen the yellow-billed cuckoo. And so I'm not a jerk. I'm not going to just start going, you know, with my thumbs and brains and wrecking things that I think are right in this world. Because we're facing a mass extinction right now. It's like, because we keep going about it our own way and doing things our own way, right? Like if I was to disregard this window, it's not like they start mating right at the 15th. They might be mating right now. But literally, I'm supposed to, by government standard anyway, that I've opened up these permits and applied to these permits that I said I'm going to behave. Not even supposed to run a chainsaw or create these loud noises, in a sense, affecting the habitat, right? And I understand that. So here it is. My intention was to create a better habitat for the creek species, including the big Goodings willows that are now lying on the ground as of last night, and myself, you know, and my guest here, to not, instead of looking at these, you know, 80, 90 foot patches of bamboo, it's like you have the entire creek you look at now, and that's amazing. But the creek has taught me a lot in the last 3 weeks. It was 3 feet from coming to my house, right? And so maybe that's the other thing I meant to write down, is there's trade-offs to everything. And you're one up if you can identify those trade-offs, but hindsight's the only thing that's 2020, right? So far as I know. And not to say it's clear, like, you know, foresight can be clear. Hell yeah, I had clear foresight. But, you know, I feel like maybe again, this comes back to manifesting. I don't know. I'm not going to say I can't. I had foresight that those trees might have been negatively affected by us removing 3 to 4 feet of dirt around their base with really heavily compacted roots going with it. Did I have the foresight that the flood was going to come up? A little bit, you know. Did I put all these things together? Not as much as I would have thought. Would it have held me back? Would I do it different? I don't know. Intention, not attachment, right? I have a tree on the ground. Now I have to chainsaw it by the 15th or look at it until the 30th, I guess, of September. So we'll sit on it for the beach, I guess. I don't know. But if another flood comes in right now, at this point, it's going to be chaos. But chaos brings order. And I mean this when I tell everybody and tell Leighton, adversity's been my, you know, longest, closest friend. Hang on.
I think you can see why I brought him on, Ken, right? Well,
no, Leighton, come on. Why? How many times I got to put up the gold bars in the background from what he just dropped, Leighton? I mean, like, Josh, I did all those shorts, etc. You know, promoting what you do and why you do it and how you do it. And brother, you just proved to everybody why the words that I used in there are the truth about who you are. That was very, very well said. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
All right. So, but how I got this property in like the more literal sense, this comes to COVID and my daughter. We're sitting in Phoenix. March 2nd was when she was born, 2020, right? So, and we did a home birth. So here was a weekend or whatever. So it might have been spring break, whatever. I left all the gardens, the school gardens I was in. I was in 5 or 6 different school gardens, elementary school gardens mostly, but also a college naturopathic garden in Tempe, an actual naturopathic garden. I mean, like ND, like a doctor, like, you know, 8+ years of school shit, like not just herbalism like what I was doing. So all that naturopath stuff coming back full circle. But anyway, 5 or 6 school gardens, but spring break comes for, I go home for the, you know, the week or whatever it was. Incidentally, my daughter was born that Monday and we did a home birth, but not at our home. It was just a home birth, like with midwives at a birth center, like right down the street from us. Serendipitous and all that. Right. But like, then that week, I think it was like, cool. So that was when COVID happened, like that next week or whatever, like that week. I was like, oh, what? Like, so I didn't have gardens to go back to, like schools started shutting down. And like, I'm not proud of this, but like we got to like, I was having like 9 o'clock morning beers, right? Like walking around my garden at home. Like there were sours, right? There was fruit in there, but still it's like, I'm like 9 o'clock. Why not? What else am I going to freaking do today? You know, like, but not like I was getting hammered. It was just like, dude, I don't have anywhere to go today. Like, why would I not start drinking a beer at 9 o'clock? Like, it was just stupid. Like, so we had to get out of there. We were watching Netflix like everyone else, like how to mortgage free, like all that kind of stuff, right? Like getting out of the rat race wasn't new to us and it's not new to a lot of people. And to go real quick back to when I was a garden teacher, I always wanted to show people 5 ways to grow lettuce, right? I always ran an aquaponics system on the garden or on the college. And they thought that was innovative for sure. It's like, dude, I've never even heard about that. I'm like, yeah, but it's also essential because we live in a freaking urban environment and not everybody has soil, you know? And so it's like some people can grow fish on their balcony. Like it's easy to do in an urban setting. Anyway, so I would grow lettuce 5 different ways: a pallet garden, or in the soil, raised bed, or in a pot, right? Like different ways. There is no how to garden. And that's what I still try to tell people when I teach garden classes, or when I do. It's more of like understanding the concepts. And the only other person I've heard use this analogy was Shango, and I forget which episode it was, and I love him for it because I think it was with Dr. Miyabi Shields talking about psilocybin and being magical. Because we don't necessarily know how all of it works. It might as well be magic, right? And this is how I talk about cars, and this is what Shango said about cars, is like, it might as well be magic. And that's what I say about gardens and people's cars. I understand how to work on mine to a degree, and I don't like knuckle busting ever. So I still take stuff I know how to do to a shop sometimes, but not everybody understands like what's going on once you turn that key. You don't have to understand combustion engines in order to drive your car every single day in order to pay your mortgage or rent, right? And yet we do it. And so it's like, can we not feed ourselves a similar way? Can we not drive the garden a similar way? If you put the right fuel in it, you know what I mean? If you steer the wheel the right way. So I try to teach the concepts and like help. When I go to someone's garden, I help them identify what we would otherwise call resources, or how to put them together. And the things I'm learning in the last few years coming from Leighton, have, definitely changed my life, and especially how I treat my cannabis, which has been like this whole like, duh, like why wouldn't I have no-tilled my, anyway, so how we got here, right? I was like, morning beers, let's get the heck out of here. Let's start looking at properties. Let's look on water. My favorite body of water in Arizona was Oak Creek. It's a free running stream. It's Arizona to Arizona. It's a watershed, but it runs 365 100 years plus, right? It's like a never-ending stream. And it's crazy, by the way, to just sit out and think about water not ever fucking ending. No one's running the faucet. It's just like this. It blows your mind. Never ending. Anyway, so I'm following the stream on Zillow, quite literally, like, looking for sale properties on Zillow. Like, let's get out of here. We had a nice spot we were paying rent for, but it was like the dude sucked and the place was like Phoenix. So we got to go. And we found this place just up the stream from us, actually, but it was a school, like an old school, like 8 buildings, like, mortar brick buildings, but it had a skate park, like a library, a science lab with Bunsen burners. Like, I have video of this property. It's crazy. Like whiteboards everywhere, desks. It was nuts. Commercial kitchen, cafeteria, like all that. And I was like, babe, we got to do this. It was 8 acres on the creek, just up the stream. But I mean, and just up the stream translates to, you go right up our hill and go left and down this hill. It's right by us. So anyway, they wanted cash. We didn't have any cash, and they wanted like $1 million, right? I was like, we've looked under the couch so many times, it just wasn't fucking there. Like, so I go back to Phoenix, and we're like, we can't turn this off. I go back to Zillow, and I'm stream hunting again, right? And all of a sudden I see the same thumbnail, and I forget maybe how it must have been, maybe the same agent, I knew it was the same agent somehow, but what caught my eye was the address was different. Like the property, the school had like 4 or 5 listings, all with a very similar address, like 5560 Willow Point, 56, like they were all Willow Point because they were subdividing this, or you could buy the whole thing. So anyway, this one was 20 Pleasant View, but it was just a thumbnail of the stream going over the ripples, over the rocks, like all the others were. So I'm like, I thought it was the same. Clicked on it. I'm like, I see our crazy, like Leighton's been here. So I see our crazy floor. I see our crazy bathroom. I see our greenhouse. I'm like, babe, this is something different. I keep clicking. I'm like a chicken coop. I was like, oh shit. And like, so anyway, I couldn't turn it off. We had to come here. And it was the same listing agent, which I was like, bro, I told you what we're looking for. Like, why didn't you tell me about this place? Like, it had been sitting on the market too. Like, doof. Anyway, Phil, you goof. So he should have told me about this place, but nonetheless, we found it. And the fast forwarding to this, like, you know, again, intention, not attachment, but rather I went back home and rather than drinking morning beers, I looked at video that I took of this property and counted the square tiles in the kitchen that I knew were 1 foot square tiles and started drawing on graphing paper how I was going to redo the casita in order to make it an Airbnb in order to pay for us being here. Right. And I knew all the other components were here. There were only other property, like it had to be an income property that I knew, even when we looked at the school, right? Like I wasn't coming into this like, I'm going to just go, like we're on a mortgage. We didn't have cash. I told you that. So like, here we are doing the work. And I was in the casita like day 1 or 2 or whatever, cleaning out the furniture that Jill did not want, including a couch and whatever. But these two nightstands that I'm like, you know, over there on next to our bed, I did not want to throw away. It was not our style. If we have one, Jill certainly does. But I was like, these are crafted like Ashley furniture, some whatever. They're crafty, and so I didn't want to throw them away. And yeah, that's the casita now. I put in that countertop, all that stuff, and the address as I'm dusting off this cobwebs was like somebody's old address that was written and once handwritten and stamped also, like it was freighted from somewhere, like, you know, went through some trouble, someone moved it, but it was 5142. I could go look right now and say what it says. I don't know. I think it starts with a B, but the address in Phoenix we moved from was 5142, right? That right there was like, dude, you know, you can call it God or Gaia or whatever. And the only other times I've manifested exact amounts of money within a minute of time that I needed them, I'm not bullshitting you on this, was when I was praying to God. I'm not kidding. And I've told Leighton these stories too. And like, so we say what we want, and I'm not religious. I'm not, but I am spiritual. And I do think that that kind of thing right there is like, you can look a gift horse in the mouth if you want to, but that kind of thing tells me I'm meant to be here. But it's also one of those things where once I'm here, I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? Right. And so here I am wrecking the creek. And I'm just kidding. But like, it's hard to see trees fall. That's not okay. Like those trees, I have to cut them now with a chainsaw. And I bet they're 50 years old. You know, I'm not 50 years old. So I don't take that lightly. But again, it's intention, not attachment, and trade-offs are everything. If you know that you can identify a trade-off, then you can weigh the value. But there are trade-offs to everything. Call it cause and effect or whatever. If you push that, you know, it's a ripple. That's an exercise I always wanted to do is, you know, have 8 kids standing around the same kiddie pool and give them all a little drop of water. And you'll show them that even when one kid drops that water, it's going to go all the way across the pool. But it's going to do that for all the kids, even when there's a lot of ripples. And we are ripples. You don't have choices not to make ripples. You're born, you're alive, you're breathing, you are making ripples. If we have consciousness of what those ripples are, then we can do something different, right? But like, that's intention, not attachment. I don't have attachment to what those ripples are going to do once you know what I mean? So anyway, that's my kind of philosophy on how I move and do stuff on this 1.8 acres that we have. We're so blessed to have on Oak Creek, but I say we're so blessed to have it. I also worked hard to get here, and like we did things that none of our friends will do. You know, we don't have air conditioning. You know what I mean? Like we don't have cell service. Like we don't. There's I'm on Wi-Fi when I have Wi-Fi calling. Like, but there's trade-offs. When the flood comes up, like it's coming in my house again. Maybe I won't be alive. Maybe I will. It's been in the house before we moved here. It'll come again. And so like there's things that people would be like, oh, I wouldn't want to do that with 100 years or whatever. And it's like, but also we have had well over 200 guests come here, and better than a handful tell us like, you guys are doing exactly what we want to do. Like, and so that's where I'm getting at. Just like I have with the college and all the gardens, I aim to inspire, not just produce, not just grow food. It's about the inspiration, and rather, you know, like I always say, creating awareness. It's about creating awareness. That's still where we are. And it might not be where we all are. We might all be like, you know, versed in, you know, I'm over a decade in with food, right? I'm pretty familiar. When someone says something, I can usually track the conversation, even if it's really deep. the thing is, it's like we aren't all there. And so we are creating awareness. I do find my mission and my calling is to be in the dark water, right? Is to pull these souls up, is to, you know, go in there and help people that need help. Not, you know, even when I was in Phoenix, people would tell me like that would resonate with how I am and how I was and how I would be in my garden and my farms. They're like, oh, you should go to like Oregon or someplace that like everybody's like that, right? And it's like, I mean, that sounds really rad. And I think, you know, my soul might in one hand be at peace, but my soul would also know that I'm here for a freaking reason. And I didn't come for all that fun shit, dude. I'm in Phoenix where people need it and where people are trying to figure out how to grow a garden. I'm here showing them with mulch, you know? And the funny thing is I do have this video that I'll share with you later, but like, I was in like, you know, not the housing but straight up the barrio I lived in. It was called Nuestro Barrio. That's where Coco Pa was, Coco Pa Garden. I mean, there was shootings in my driveway. Like it was real shit. Like, but here I am taking a video. It's monsoon season. And I'm the crazy white guy that gets mulch dropped off right in the barrio. Like, but when you get mulch dropped off, you get like, you know, a dump truck. It's not like a short thing. It's like the whole size of a vehicle or better, right? And people are like, dude, what are you doing? And I say, and like, so I'm sitting here wheelbarrows about, you know, 50 wheelbarrows into my backyard that is not even that big. But here comes monsoon season and like I'm out like just walking in my mulch, mycelium everywhere. Like my chickens are happy. And then like I'm taking a video, right, of me in my backyard with my block wall. Like y'all probably know what I mean, just like that ugly cinder block wall that they put in cities. And like I just go right up over the wall real quick, and my just neighbor is a swimming pool in their backyard. Disgusting, dude, because their dog would be shitting back there. You know what I mean? It's like, dude, I have a dog too. It's pooping and it's all good, bro, because I got mulch. And like, so anyway, I have Coco Pa Garden shirts still. One of them on the back is like, do you even mulch? Or no, bro, do you even, or maybe it didn't say bro, but yeah, do you even mulch? Like, so anyway, I always aim to inspire through action. You know, I'm way past theory. I'm into practical. I've been a long time, and like, but sure, I exercise theory still. I think like that you keep my brain growing, but like I aim to engage and inspire. So when people come to a property like this, and I also mean this, I was doing weird research like on stuff like a ram pump before I ever knew I was going to be on this property. That briefly, in order for a ram pump to work, it means that you have your property sits uphill from your water, first of all. And in order for the ram pump to work, water has to be moving, not at a very hard pace, but moving and downhill. So you've got water moving down the stream. Like what a weird combination. But here I am. I have two waterfalls meaning the water drops in elevation like 6-8 inches on our property. And my growing place is 30 feet uphill, elevation wise, 30 feet, you know. And I also just so happen to have, I looked into this, but the property does, not me. I could create a statement of claim, but we have 0.71 acre feet of water that we can draw for our future orchard or whatever it is that the chickens currently are in. And when I do that, it's going to be something I talk about and teach about. And when I put a hydroelectric generator in, yeah, it's going to benefit me, but like also I'm going to talk about it and teach about it because that is what I'm here to do. Right. So anyway, sorry, man, that's the whole story, how we got here, how I am, the property 1 hour later.
Dude, that's why it was so important. You know,
Yeah.
you've been on a journey, and
For sure, man.
This is why you're here now, is because of all of those steps and processes that you went through. And yeah, you earned it, dude. We've had that conversation, and not only did you manifest it, and you did, you asked for it, you wished for it, whatever you want to call it.
Right. Yeah. And then we went after it. When they were like, here it is. Do you really want it? Because that's what it always asks you is, do you really want it? Do you really want it?
And careful what you asked for too.
Oh, yeah.
It's giving you an opportunity to back out of what you're
right. Yeah. Once you put it in motion, though, things happen, and you're like, you know, once you've committed, you have to commit. I mean, but you can't You can't 1 foot in it. That's
No.
what I say. And that's what I mean is I know that people can live that life of manifesting. I say I have real experiences and I still carry that dollar I told you about. And I will share those experiences openly, but I also just, that's not how I live my life. I just try to live plugged in some altruistic manner that doesn't harm me because that's where my faults lie, right? It's just like altruism to a fault. It's like, well, who and what am I? It's like, well, dude, you still have to have some intention. But I also mean to say, hey, haste makes waste. So I do try to operate slowly, but oftentimes things move at their own pace. And
Yes.
when you have a parcel like this, nature moves in slow paces, but you're looking at 100 different things, right? And so maybe only 5 of them are moving at this pace, and it's like, but things are moving on. It's like, I got to prune the mulberries. I'm not done. I still got to prune the grass because the grass awns are coming. I found the first grass awn inside today, and those are not good for my dog's paws. So they're also not going to be good for guests' paws, dog's paws, right? Anyway, it's like, I wasn't ready to mow the lawn. I still have creek work to do. I still have, it's like, bro, it doesn't matter, man. Stuff's going to keep moving, and it's going to keep moving whether you're going to move with it or whether you're not going to move with it. And it's not, I aim to be a steward, but it's not that I believe, and this is what I always tell my students too, like, well, not necessarily the littles, they're harder to get this, but we as, people live on this spectrum. And I say maybe gardeners, I don't know where this all really goes, but we all live on the spectrum in a sense of understanding to manipulating, right? Of like, we can understand how a process works, or rather, even before that, we can just be a part of a process, right? We're just driving the car, we're just a part of it. We're creating smog and all that. We're just a part of it. But we can understand a little more as further in depth we go, right? Like, and then we can start being a steward of stuff. But then, like, over here, we have stuff like GMOs and chemtrails, and I'm like, I don't think we should be over there, man. I don't think that's just my personal opinion. I think we should probably be back over here somewhere in the middle, because not only do I think that's like, quote, God's work, I think that's unforeseen trade-offs. There's going to be unforeseen consequences. And I just don't think that we all should be playing with that kind of stuff yet. But win or learn, never lose. That's what I also say. And I know, Leighton, you said we've had like 7 extinction, and I've drilled you about it, right? I'm like, but what about the plastics, man? I'm like, but there was never plastics before, and now we have all these freaking microplastics. And it's like,
And what did I tell you? Oh, we're just building food for the next system that's coming in play.
Exactly. That's what I'm like, we should start working on this now, because we've talked about this. Like, we all have plastic. It's just a fact, right? We all have plastic. And why? I'm pondering this, so don't drill me. This is a devil's advocate, but why do we think it's better to take all our plastic and concentrate it in some place where it won't in fact break down, and or it gets found in our ecosystems later throughout, and rather than our ecosystems, meaning like all bodies of life, I think, as far as we understand now that we've measured, have microplastics. Like, so at what point do we stop? Like, it's like, could we correct that? I don't know. I'm not a scientist, and like, I don't know the studies of how we could so-called remedy what we've done. But the thing is, why is it better for that rather than, like, say me, just as an example? I'm not saying I do this, but sometimes I do. Sometimes I see plastic around my property and I'm like, whatever, man, a little zip tie or something that was like sun rotted and broke off. I'm like, I have mycelium and worms. I have, you know what I mean? I'm like, I'm creating biointelligent soil. And if, first of all, I'm not worried about GMOs. Like, I drank a soda this week. I don't drink a lot of soda, but I know that for me, I was more worried about the dollars and the voting that all created, of causal, like, let's create and grow more GMOs to put them in sodas, and rather than like the GMOs that are in my body from that. I don't care. That's not what I was getting at. And also, so I'm saying the microplastics, like, how far are we going to let this go? There are stuff that people have said it's adverse, and I understand that. Like, but you know what I'm saying? It's a conversation worth having. Like, as we go forward, why are we not thinking of ourselves more responsibly as stewards, like partaking more responsibly? And so one of the things I posed was like shredding up bottles or stuff. Remember, like, it was like, instead of perlite, But you'd have to measure those things, and maybe what the leaching or whatever would be. I don't know. It'd be a really long, drawn out thing. But like when we put it all together, again, I beat up on perlite, but only because I can. Why do we have perlite in everything still? Like, what the heck is perlite? Where have we never really even stopped to think about it? I'm not saying it's harmful, but technically it could be. Like, it can cause silicosis, right? If you're around enough of it or whatever. I'm sure the workers at those plants are not like, I'm sure they're wearing some, respiratory gear, but like, it's just that idea of like mining something in an industry scale and calling it good, or for that matter, calling anything good or bad. But like, it's just still, why is that why are we allowed to do that? Why is that like what we've come to be, right? And like, for sure, we talk about pit moss, like, because we love pit moss. I did a post about pit moss this week or rather Jill, maybe I did do it. I did do that one. Yeah, that's why it was so long. And Jill was like, that's the whole post? I'm like, yeah. Yeah. And I even cut out the part about using 20% or less. It's like, I really could go on and on about it, but I know they cut you off at some point too. So I was like, I better just wrap it up here. But my point goes back to that whole mining. It's like, here a bag of organic soil is supposed to be good, but when you look behind it and you start looking at the lens and you go through these layers, it's like mind. When you have places like pit moss, or you have local anywhere, I'm in a town of 3,000 people, but we have a huge amount of trees that are not getting chipped. We have, I'm sure, just as much stuff not getting recycled, paper, you know what I mean? It's like, when we start thinking in communal, responsible ways, we can come up with these answers and essentially maybe a whole new potting soil if we even needed one. But I don't know, it's just stuff I think about. It's like, why is it my right to use such a thing? Where does it even come from? And like, why does it, you know what I mean? Like, in order to just grow my food, like, but plants grow everywhere. So like, what I've been working with Leighton with recently, and why we understand this working so well, is I want to teach people to grow like the cottonwood grows. And when I teach people my seed to stash cannabis classes, that's what I talk about, because I use worms and cover crop and sometimes avocado tech, but definitely biology. And before I forget, because I told Keith I would shout him out. You remember I asked you about his quote formula on seeds and clones. So he said on the podcast, wasn't it Farmer Kyle? Was that right?
Yep.
Is it Farmer Kyle? Yeah. So he was on that podcast, which was great. If y'all hadn't listened to that, it's amazing. But what he said was he waters with fish brew, with only water and fish brew twice in a 4-day period, and gets germination, or maybe he didn't say that on there, but with only fish brew, and he gets germination 4 days faster. That's what he said on the podcast. And then when I emailed him to ask, he said, here's the dilution ratio. I forget exactly, so I don't want to say it on here and mess people up, but you could email him. He said basically, yeah, he told me you get germination 4 days faster, but you only water twice within the 4-day period. So I didn't do that. I used his dilution ratio, but I'm listening to my soil and watering how I need to. But not kidding you, I put the seeds in the soil Saturday. I didn't do like a 12-hour water soak. I didn't do a baggie, none of that. I put them in my mouth for like 30 seconds while I close the seed pack, and I put them in their soil. And I have little necks coming up already, right? It's crazy. And I looked in my calendar, like I flipped back to the ones I started on the February full moon. Like, these were 2 days after the full moon, but I do it for good tracking. And they were, sure enough, 4 days later. Crazy.
Nice.
So, but yeah, biology. It's all about the biology, right? Like, that's what this is.
Right,
So.
Ken?
No, I never say that. Never.
But it is, but the thing is that Leighton talks about, like, the biology can't, well, in one hand, yes, it can fix the structure, but if the components aren't there, it can't put them there. You'd be waiting for a flood or something, right? Like,
well, that's the difference. We talk about geological time versus human time. Right. Geological time, 1,000 years is a blink, right? We live for 80 years, so we're in a hurry. Everything has to be next year.
Right.
So that's the big issue, and you're spot on that chemistry is the only limiting factor to biology. But then when you allow geological time to come into play, those plants will find and pull up all of the nutrients that are necessary, die and leave that prep the soil for the next succession. So it'll take care of it. It's just you've got to be let go and let the universe, and not try to steer it, which is the hardest thing for humans, because we're only here for so long that we feel the necessary to make everything beautiful the way we want it right now. And that's a real struggle. And unfortunately, most humans don't get that. And more often than not, they don't even want to think about it, dude. You know, how many heads in the sand right now? And,
right.
You know,
that's what I'm looking at as a sandbank. And I was going to say, literally almost nothing is more beautiful to me than what the creek's doing. Like when it does it, it's just like, I love watching the water flow outside of its normal channel and just how it looks when it's flowing over other rocks or, but so I'll transition because Jill just walked up, but teaching people how the cottonwood grows. And I say that because our logo is a cottonwood tree that grows out behind our house. It's a friend that drew that logo for us. But it's the cottonwood tree that grows behind our house that our arborist friend in our community estimates to be about 150 years old. So that's pretty rad. But what is going to be the silver lining of this, since Leighton, like it was serendipitous how this happened, because I was refraining from sending like a billion photos that were like of silt and all this stuff, and like was thinking about resources. But again, like he said, I was in move mode. I'm like, I got to clear the reed by the 15th. I got to do this. I got to do this. And I'm like, I don't have time to sift and sort and move. And like, I just had to put on a different thinking cap, which is really hard sometimes when you like already think you know what you're going to do. But like, I forget how that even happened.
We were texting.
But you text me something about silt and clay and like Gaia sending me stuff, and you're like, I'm gonna send you people, you ready? And I was like, wait, what? So like he convinces me to have piles of silt and clay sitting around the property on sand now that I'm gonna start sifting soon, because my machine work stops on the 15th, you know. So it's like, cool, now I have a lot of organization to do. But again, like, it is about the biology, but like Leighton's always trying to convince people, and I've seen this work, otherwise I would not say it. I'm telling you, I've seen it work, or I wouldn't be saying this. I've seen it like in my 12 years of buying, quote, super soil or organic matter, rather soil less media is really the official, right? There's no clay, there's no silt. Well, there might be some in it, but it's essentially humic organic compost or whatever. That's what everybody's been going for. And in the last 12 plus years, that's what I've gone for. But I also, as a farmer, have long known about the CEC and the power of clay, like the cation exchange capacity and the importance rather of clay, and why I would prefer to grow in soil with mulch. You have fungal connections happening there. It's magic. But until I really listen to somebody put this in logical context about soil horizons and how they work and what the A does, and essentially being a lungs of a system, or a bladder is another word maybe, but I like lungs better. But it matters, and it really, really, really matters. Like, it's a difference. So you can have all the biology in the world in a pot of soilless media or whatever else. It does not work the same as when you have the soil structure properly there. And I would argue, even having those two together, you can get away with chemistry imbalances a little better.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think I'm positive. Yeah, I'm positive of that. But anyway, like I said, Jill walked up here. She's here listening to me rant. You should all say hi to her.
The boss is home is what you're saying, right?
Thanks for spelling your name right too, Ken.
Thank Jillian, and you're welcome. You sent me an email with the right spelling, and that was the spelling I used. So anybody that's coming on the show, give me your right spelling so I can use the right spelling. You know, I try.
Thank you. I love a good reader. Anyone who reads all the details, that's my people.
Well, Joshua, thank you so much for sharing that. You know, it was so heartfelt, and I'm glad that you did get a chance to really explain how you got here, because a lot of the guests will just roll through those experiences, those ups and those downs, those trials and tribulations, And I don't think it gives the same impact. I don't think it gives people the drive, the faith, the hope, the goal to keep pushing when things are not going well. And you know, those times of darkness, those times of hardship, those are so important in what I want to call, you know, spiritual husbandry, like really getting to know yourself and how you react in you know, times of tribulation. You know, we had a guest on recently who, you know, was like, oh, just go to people that like you. And I'm like, no, you're missing the point. You know, you have to stick your toes into the dark water. You have to do the shadow work. You have to understand that people need to hear the voice of reason. They need to hear hope and potential and all of the things as they travel through the darkness, so that maybe they can pop their head up. And he was adamant about like, oh, no, only go where you're invited, and don't waste time trying to teach people who don't want to learn. And it's like, no, because sometimes you actually get through, and that's part of your dream. And you know, that was what the beautiful part that really came out of you spending the time that you did to try to explain why or how you ended up where you are here today. So thank you.
And
that was
I told Jill about that because I watched that episode somehow. I almost never have time to watch these just based on like how things function in our life as they're live. I mean, but I got to watch that one live. And so in the one hand, the thing that I told her was that like, maybe on paper you would say, or something like that. Then this is not my feeling or belief. Because I mean no disrespect whatsoever to Dan. I wouldn't hold a candle on paper to Dan or his accreditations, right? And even the things that I've done with certifying a farm, like it's just not even close. That's like his resume, right? It's just like, oh my God, or portfolio, whatever you want to say. But I also agree with you, and like the moment, because you said fighting a war or something like that. It was like what you said, and I was like, whoa. Because like it was just one of those things where like to be accepting, like, you know, I'll just leave it here, but I that's my calling as well, you know what I mean? So it's just like to each their own is how I was getting at it. It's like if that's,
and we're
Yeah.
all intricate gears in this beautiful
100%.
crazy clock,
right?
Called
Exactly. It takes
right?
the community for sure, but I believe that my role is creating awareness, and you can't just go where you're invited. I can't just go where I'm invited is what I'm saying. I very much, I know my soul knows that I'm here to pull people up.
Agreed.
Even if I know that I still have somewhere to go, right?
Or even if they drag you down a little. Either way.
Yeah, you have the awareness, right? You just win or learn, never lose. That's the thing.
Exactly.
So,
beautiful words, my friend. Thank you so much for sharing today.
Yeah.
And are you bouncing, or are you going to stay with us?
If the baby wakes, I'll bounce, but I'll hang here. I'll just let Jill talk. You know, she's got a chair, I guess. So.
Oh.
All right, Jill. Welcome to the show, and a little bit about your background too. So, where did you come from, and how'd you end up here?
Yeah. Well, born and raised in this beautiful state in Phoenix, so city girl. Started teaching elementary school and got really involved in school garden work and kind of plugged into local farm community doing that work, and met Josh at the farmers market. Of course, I was, you know, on my broke teacher salary, and he was selling the cheapest veggies. So I would beeline it right to his table. Not only were they cheap, but they were delicious. Because he knew how to grow prolifically, so he was able to feed the masses. But and really just loved the connection of the two systems of food and education, which are both a little bit overwhelming in their current state in certainly the Western, this world that we live in here and in the US, and lots of connectivity of how they can influence each other systematically, and the way that of course we have the young minds that get to help change all of that, and ours as well. We can young and old, we can all do the change, but we've got these next generations of beings who can begin to shape a world in a sustainable way too. So, and learn from all, cultures and communities and build each other up. So that's what I've been doing for the last 10 plus years. And then we moved to this awesome place to just continue that journey in like a slightly different way, but we're not far from that original community in Phoenix. And we get to spend a lot of time down there as well. So up here in the Verde Valley, we've also kind of branched out into different fields in addition to educating, but just hosting all kinds of workshops. So not just related to to school topics, but of course all the growing. And I have the pleasure of working with a midwife up here, and I do a lot of birth education as well. So get to work with new parents as they are kind of honing into the last special time of their pregnancy and preparing for birth. And there's the similarities, of course, it's all biology, so it's all the same when it plants, animals, humans. I actually saw a seed the other day. I was with Astor, and we were at the park, and the seed was like coming out of, or the sprout was coming out of the seed that was like, in concrete, coming up from concrete. It looked like a sunflower seed, but it wasn't. But the sprout was coming out, it was coming out like butt first. It looked like a breech baby, and I just couldn't get over how it wasn't that like perfect, and just the way that life is so powerful, and the way that seeds just want to be in the world, starting new life, same as babies. They'll do anything that they can just to be able to get here and come earthside. So that's how we spend that's how I spend my time. That's how we spend our time. And our partnership is unique because we combine all sorts of we have different brains, so we get to lean on each other and support. It's like being married to the Lorax. I'm sort of the translator who
I've been chopping down trees this week, apparently.
You what?
Been killing trees this week, apparently.
Hey, you haven't been killing anything, brother. That was nature doing its thing.
Coming to the willow.
That's nature.
Okay.
She's doing her thing. And you are stewarding, you're assisting in what we call evolutionary strategies.
Yeah.
So common
we
thing.
Plan to do a replant.
Yeah, well, you know what? Your orchard's going right there, isn't it? Right near there?
Well, yeah, for sure. The fruit trees, but we're going to put more riparian trees down there, probably this Earth Day.
Yeah. So again, and that, and I'm getting off topic, but I'm going there anyway. That vineyard that you created with those baskets of rock and everything else are really supporting a more advanced riparian system. You put the foundation in for that river to really express itself.
Yeah,
and
it was crazy.
Footholds of new species that will work in polyculture. And for the audience, I wish they all could go there. And if you can, definitely Airbnb there. It is one of the most incredibly spiritually powerful areas. It definitely has some kind of vortex up there, and it's this like emerald necklace that runs through the desert. So you got, high desert on both sides, and it dips down into this little valley where it's just lush and it's cooler. The air is much more oxygenated. It's just a special place. And again, kudos to you guys because you deserved it. You earned it. And the Gaia, the universe provided. And so, enjoy, I guess is what I should say. And never hesitate in following your gut instincts, Joshua, when you're out there with a chainsaw or with a digger or the excavator, whatever it is that you got, skid steer, just go with it, man. Trust your intuition and your instincts, because you're absolutely doing the right thing.
Right.
And so that was kind of off topic, but Jill, I wanted to ask you, have you ever heard of Anastasia and the Ringing Cedars?
No.
It's a book, and the book itself takes you down a rabbit hole that is almost unbelievable. And so a lot of people read the first book and just say this is garbage, right? But if you continue to read on, there's not only some really, really amazing parental advice about how to deal with a brand new baby and how to allow that baby to experience life without being distracted with perhaps mobiles and toys and noises and some of the other things that we as parents are programmed to believe that it's the right way to parent. Her philosophies are she just sets the baby in a field and just walks away. She keeps an eye on it, but
right.
She lets the baby, play with bugs and dig up sticks and so that would have been the way we as an earlier species would have brought our children up, because we were all busy, hunter and gathering. And so there was no toys, there was no programming of television, cell phones, talking toys, things that buzz, light up and distract.
Yes.
So anyway, I really highly suggest you get the series. Yeah, and check it out. You're going to just be like, oh my God, this is so intuitive. Why aren't we all doing this?
No, it's really all about that. I use the word intuition just all the time, I feel like in classes, because it's so similar of sort of this, this stripping away, that distillation to be able to listen to all the wisdom that we have. And that is definitely true at a time like, birth or child rearing. And, but yeah, it's the similar system of being able to listen and learn. And, often Josh will always say he doesn't like to teach anyone how to garden. And maybe he kind of, talked about this. There's not one perfect gardening book, just like there's not one perfect how to have your baby book. There's just there's so much information, and we don't need that one perfect book, because we have all the answers. We just have to open and listen and learn from those who came before. And so it's all very similar. It's all so connected. But spring, we're definitely feeling this new renewed energy this spring, and feeling so affected by the season, and inspired and ready to. It's just amazing how cyclical, when we can tune into living cyclically, how powerful it is. Oh my gosh, I'm feeling this spring more than I think I ever have. But that's
she's giving you the energy. She's giving you the energy, and that's important, because you guys are what we call very bright lights, but often the brightest lights get sucked the most energy out of them, because you are such a bright light. So that's why she's charging you up, because she's going to turn around, kick you in the ass later in the season.
Yeah, we'll take it. It's we know that gratefully. I'll gratefully get kicked around.
So Jill, please do share a little bit about your COVID experience, because as Joshua shared, you guys were like us, like, wait, what? They shut the world down? Wait, what is going on?
I was the only one drinking morning beers.
Yeah. I literally one day, I'd say probably 2 months in, I just looked at Pauline and I was like, hey, where are all those mushrooms? She's like, what are you talking about? I go, well, the mushrooms that you use, or used to use to get off your antidepressants. And she goes, well, what are you going to take mushrooms? I'm like, I feel the need to. Like, I got to do something here. Like, I can't just sit here reading about all of this information that's being thrown at me from people that I know are playing fucking serious games, and this smells really nasty, and I don't feel good about it, and I don't know where it's going, and I felt that I needed a reset, and so I ended up resetting, and it helped tremendously. But please tell me what you went through, when that time hit.
I'm actually really grateful for the timing of it all, because our daughter was born March 2nd of 2020. And I don't think I entirely was prepared for like the postpartum period. I hadn't spent a lot of time around newborns in my life. I'm like the youngest, and I never, like, I didn't work in nurseries, and so I truly had no idea. And there was some comfort in the fact that everyone was in their homes being quiet, and certainly for those initial months when everyone was just sort of seeing what was, going on. And so it forced us to be very insular as a family with our newborn. And there's the fourth trimester, like the first 40 days, there are a bunch of books written about how especially Eastern cultures hold that time so sacred, and that truly it is a time where parents don't leave their newborn, and you don't leave the house, and you really create this cozy, very kind of soft, slow environment as this life is, entering in the world and changing. And so we were able to do that. And that is a credit to Josh, who really just encouraged us to be that way. And I don't think if it wasn't exactly at that same time, I would have maybe had I would have had more FOMO. I would have had kind of more of the societal norms of like, oh, I just had my baby like yesterday and I'm going to the coffee shop, like, look at me, I'm doing so great. And yes, we have those energies where of course you want to get out, with your baby and enjoying the world. But there's a lot of pressure for women to just like have your baby and get back in the, world, if you will. And there was no world to get back into. So I learned so much, and it was really challenging to just be in the, bed for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. And so I kind of have this very skewed of perspective, I think, of it all, because I will say that my christening as a new mom has fully usurped in my memory COVID. And I am actually really so happy for that too. It's like there was so much going on, and it was so emotional, and it was so emotional for the world. And it's almost like since they happened at the same time, I can't even separate them really. And I think we had a kind of unique experience that way, because then we moved, out of the city pretty quickly in July. And so then we were in a place that was pretty quiet then for the rest of those, it's 2 years as it all kind of continued and unfolded. So certainly there was all of that, uncertainty and a little bit of that fear, but I was just such a roller coaster anyway, that there was, I don't know, I have a unique, it's kind of a unique perspective, I guess, on it all, because
and that's the reason I asked, is because Joshua told us that your child was born a few days before the shutdown. So, in many ways, in my mind, again, that the universe hard as work. That was all for a reason, was so that you didn't go through postpartum and forced back into the workforce, and were allowed to spend that really critical time with your child. I mean, we as a society are just so gung-ho to throw everybody right back into the works. And if you do not allow that bonding of the family at that critical time, you're separating them forever. The end result is very similar to what happens here in Western society, where we throw our parents in the nursing home, write them off, get our kids to college, write them off, and then we get written off. And it's really sad, because like the Europeans and a lot of the other countries in the world, your grandparents are brought into the house. You're a family as a unit, not segregated and separated off into your own realms. So that's just a beautiful example of, divine timing.
For sure. And because the way that, and I have definitely perspective on how privileged we were to be able to do that. And I say that with a true understanding. I mean, there is what a the way that we have structures that are we're not supporting families, in that early time financially and with leave and with disability. And so this is it's a series of conversations that fold into it. So I don't say that lightly as like, oh, everyone should just be at home for 40 days. I mean, that's just, it's wild that's not, that is so hard to do. For most families in our country. So I don't say it lightly, and certainly lots of change needs to happen that way. And it was we were both teachers. And so all of a sudden schools didn't even know. It was like, what is school? I mean, we didn't know if we had job. We essentially just lost our jobs were dissolving because they were kind of these fringe roles in school. So schools had to make decisions for, what prioritizing this, administrators and teachers and friends have said this is the 2 hardest years of their lives in education, people who've been teaching for 40 plus years. So it just was there was just a series of situations that all happened, and lots of it was scary, if you will, and hard. And so but I think we were able to just sit with each other and just sit in the, togetherness, even amongst some of the turmoil. And I wouldn't trade it for anything.
And I say the same thing. I was so blessed. Pauline and I moved into this house in California on the 4th. So 2 days after your baby was born, and the world shut down on the 6th. And it was scary as hell, and it was crazy. And, we would be we'd go to the walk on the beach every day because we're like, well, I've researched all morning. I'm sick of reading up on this stuff. Let's just get out of here. And so we were allowed to spend some incredibly quality time together at a very important junction of her life.
Yeah.
So again, amongst all the turmoil, because I was not considered, what was the work status? You were either important or not. I forget what they called
it. Non-essential or essential.
Essential. I was non-essential, right? So, it was like, wait, what? What do you mean I can't work? What is this? And so, but it forced me to reflect deeper on who I am, what I was doing. I did the mushroom trip, and we spent a lot of time going to vortexes. There's a bunch of them out here, and just spending the day, in nature and just reveling at it. And I look back at it now, and I'm so blessed because I really would never have gotten to know Pauline at such a deep spiritual level that I did.
Yeah.
So, again, I'm very blessed as well.
For sure.
And I'm glad you shared that, because I thought that, that's kind of important for people to start now to think back about where they were and what was happening to them, because so many people became aware. So many people woke up. And I'm going to use the term woke because the true term of that is when you finally open your eyes and say, wait a minute, what? Right? That's the first question. Wait a minute, what? Mm-hmm. And that leads you on a path to start to question your actions, question what you're doing, who you are, why you're here. All of that's been taken away from us. We're not allowed to figure out who we're supposed to be or given the opportunity to take other paths. We're jammed into a career that we probably don't like, working with people that we probably don't like, and doing stuff that just to earn a paycheck to do what? Right? To pay for things that I don't necessarily need. So, again, I'm using you guys as a sounding board for the audience and for the future listeners to this, to take the time to reflect back on where you were when the shit went down and how it made you feel and what you learned from it, because it was a huge setback for the globe. And people
and I think we just now have I feel like we're just now really finding just like so comfortably gathering with people and right, maybe in the last year or so, we've just found this wonderful group of friends, and so many of whom have little children. We all were just going, what just happened? Like, I don't even think we know what happened. And we watch how it what school, the son was like essentially out of school for 2 years in the middle of, at the end of middle school, and like what that is to, it's all, everyone's just going, what? I mean, we are day by day still trying to kind of still just come out of it all and fill in gaps but work towards a new paradigm for sure. Not saying we need to return, but just making sure that everyone's just okay. Ugh.
When I came back, you were saying something, and it really jogged something that I also is just like, it's a heartstring and a live by. It was the things like you were like, people are like, what am I, why, something, but you didn't say how, which I appreciate. So the thing is, like, I left this out when I said I was drinking morning beers. For most of my adult life, I've struggled with depression, right? Also anxiety. I still struggle with anxiety, like on a daily, but depression, I think I've got it mostly figured out at how to keep it at bay most days, at least for the past few years with my daughter. I think she has kept some whimsical thing alive in me that I thought was dead since my 14-year-old. It's like, it's a long time. It's a long age gap difference. I thought I was going to be a lot more tired and already dealing with depression, being that she was on the doorstep. And then, when she got here, but also, psilocybin does help people, just saying. But what you said is the why and the what am I? And I believe, like you were saying, the fundamental issue with a lot of mental, what do we call it? Just health issues. Our purpose is the lack of purpose, and however constructed that lack of purpose may be. Some people have different theories on how sinister that is or whatever. But we lack community. We lack a tribal sense of need for each other to have purpose. We lack that communal ability to hold space while somebody figures out what their purpose is. And instead, we're going through these career tracks and anxiety and with these mental health issues, eating drugs and never mind, that's a different tangent. But we always ask ourselves, how? And it's like, one of the things I was listening to was Les Brown and other little motivational things, but Les Brown is amazing. And what I was listening to, and one of the things that I credit him for saying, because this is where I first heard it, was when you start with how, you're already going to, how it's a prohibiting question. It immediately suggests there's a hurdle there, rather than if the what and the why are clear, the how just moves out of the way.
Yep.
It becomes a part of the process. Like it becomes a statement, not a question. This is how I did it. But it's that fundamental what and why that we don't really a lot of times get to ask ourselves, like you said, the spiritual husbandry or whatever. But I believe that to be like one of the biggest flaws, however it came to be, that we just need that ability for us to each look into what our purpose is, and it's not as, a lot of times it's not as surface as it appears to be, unfortunately, how,
and it can change too. We go through phases and we cycle through and we play different roles. And
well, nonetheless, having a purpose, I'm saying having a driving cause, being a purpose, not just pay my bills, wake up and pay my bills. Like that's a fear-based logic, and it's scary and it's cyclical, rather than a hope-based logic of being plugged in and driven. Like, what and why am I doing this today?
Right. And that's the key right there, is that you had the opportunity to invest in yourself and not be subject to a corridor, a lane, or a path that you would force down. So again, this is the conversation I was talking about. This is that, the depth and the beauty and the ability for us to influence or to encourage or to provide hope or a dream to someone else out there. That's what it's all about, man. It's all about that. We have the opportunity, we have a platform, we have a voice, and others perhaps don't, and therefore it's kind of our job. It's kind of a respect thing, that we respect that we have these things, that we produce things that can help benefit other people. And, you know, I mean, you clearly know I take the shit pretty seriously.
But it's like the fungi, you know, the fungi is omnipresent, and resource acquisition, right? It is non-prejudice in a sense a lot of times. Like I guess I'm referring to saprophytic myceliums really, and just that it can be such a neural network of the soil, of how it is breaking things down, but it's not necessarily it's just breaking things down. You know what I mean? But it's plugged in, it's together, it's not, it's omnipresent. It's like everything's a resource. So including social media, right? Like we're on Instagram, we're on YouTube right now, using this for what we would, I hate using the word good, but for using it for good, right?
Using
I've
it for
watched stupid stuff on YouTube is what I'm saying. And I've definitely watched stuff on Instagram. So, but we only have limited hours, we think. And so it's like, I'm definitely saying it's about the omnipresence and the platform, or the energy and the wind that's out there, and using it while it's there, you know.
Or being responsible steward is probably the better way to put it.
Yeah, that's where you were getting at, and you're right. It is.
And you know what's even more interesting is that in 2021, some new information had come out about mycelium, and the fact that we all assumed that inside that core was just saprophytes. Well, it's not. It's endophytes. It's mycorrhizae. It's bacteria, protozoa moving in and out, you know, endophytically into the different types of fungi. Right. And they're all sharing and providing that sustenance for each other to move forward, which is exactly what the fuck we're doing here.
It just makes sense. I mean, you know, from a logical perspective, like removing yourself entirely in objective or observationist perspective, it makes perfect sense. And like, we should learn to behave more similarly is what I'm, you know, thinking.
Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of what you guys are doing up there. You found your lane. You found a new group of people who are like-minded, less forced into that lane, and more free to move about. I mean, one of the things that just blew my mind last summer was, you know, we did an improv to a soil day at your place, and you're like, hey, can I bring a couple of friends? I'm like, yeah, go for it, right? How many people showed up there that day?
I think there was like maybe, I don't know, I remember like maybe 15, maybe.
Dude, there was a lot of people rolled in and out, and I paid attention to this.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, this was really important to me, because when I did the first one, I was like, this was the first time I'd been out in public since Pauline's passing, and I actually ended up having an anxiety attack. I don't have, and it made me realize, like, oh my God, like I've been crippled. I've been set back here, and so I started paying attention to how many people were there, because, you know, I'm like, well, why am I having an anxiety attack? There's only like 10. Wait a minute, there's like 25 people here, right? And the reason I'm going there is I was forced to start to pay attention to why that happened to me, because normally I could stand up in front of 200 people and not even lose a beat. Like I don't care, right? So I started paying attention to every one of them that I did. I think I did 6 of them in total. And there were usually between 30 and 50 people. And some of them rolled in and out, but there was at least that many bodies at each one of these. 3 years prior to this, I would be lucky to get 3 or 4 people to show up. And none of them asked intelligent questions. Whereas, you know, I don't think I got a dumb question out of anyone at every one of these. They were all super intelligent. People had obviously been doing the work behind the scenes. They obviously spent that period of COVID to learn more about food or soil health or any of these topics that are just so critical to the future of humanity in on so many levels. Like, we can't continue to just eat pharmaceuticals and eat processed foods that we have no control over. Right. And so, you know, that was like, again, part of the thing that came to me is like, wow, a lot of people really woke up during that period of time. And, you know, that great reset, whatever you want to call it, probably is the last hope we have to really stand up and say, I'm not going to take this anymore. I'm not going to be a prisoner. And so anyway, I'm going down a place I don't want to go, but you know, it's more about let's keep it light. Let's keep it fluffy. Let's encourage people to, you know, think about the options that they have. Like you guys, I mean, nothing was set in stone, right? Everything was like in flux, but yet look where you landed. Look where you ended up in this beautiful spot, in this incredible emerald necklace on a mountainside.
Yeah, ton of work, and you know, and gratitude and sacrifice, but just doing it all with definitely an open to possibilities. I think has been consistent. We have stayed open. We have also, you know, we've had our moments, and we will continue to do so, I think. And you know, we'll call you, Leighton, because we do every time. But
I'm here for you guys 24/7, 365.
Lots of learning, especially from, you know, old school. There's so many wonderful people in our neighborhood and communities all over the, you know, world who are have so much knowledge. So just always asking, always learning. We certainly don't. Yeah, we are not the imparters of knowledge. We are the sharers of experiences. That's.
You can't put a value on experience.
Yeah,
you can't. You know, that's who drives us. That's who makes us who we end up to be. So, so tell me more about what you're doing up there at the farm, Jill. I know, you know, Josh is doing his thing, running around like a madman, but I know you're a big part of that backbone up there. So please do share.
Yeah, we have lots of different roles for sure. Gosh, right now I'm just loving learning more about flowers. And I mean, I'll put anything in a, you know, vase and put it on a table and put a glass of wine next to it and call it a party. So I love just walking around and looking at different bloom. I mean, recently we had it was last summer, last spring, one of the pear tree, we were trimming pears, but you know, the pear blossoms are just, gosh, so white and beautiful. And I was like, I'm putting this inside, you know, cut a branch and put it inside. And like the next couple of days, I was like, who peed? Like I would walk through like, what smells like ammonia? Like what, you know, of course it was the pear, that particular pear giving off its pheromone scent from its blossoms that were so strong and powerful. But yeah, I'll put onion seed blossoms in the inside. So loving flowers, loving a journey with flowers. And
right. Let's go back. She took a flowering branch of a pear tree and put it in a vase.
Yeah, but it wasn't
like
I wasn't going to stop the pear. The pear tree needed to be pruned. Okay, this was last spring.
I'm just talking about her creativity.
We hadn't pruned it. Also,
anything goes in a vase, is what she said.
It needed to be pruned,
including fruiting trees.
So yeah, that's always fun. Journey with flowers, and any sort of way that we can organize, you know, folks to come here and in different ways. So that's kind of what I do as well, manage the Airbnb. But in terms of the, you know, biology and I mean, gosh, I learned so much from Josh. So really it's running everything by him, but getting started this spring with, you know, starts and really kind of getting a handle on, I would say this spring season is a lot of the learning that I've done in these last couple of months. I'm so quick to put seeds outside. I'm just so quick to plant. And then we get these, you know, frosts. And so really just watching and learning and having a little bit more patience so that things don't have to be redone, because we've certainly done that as well. So having a little more patience and learning from systems and take their time. So already we know what we've got to prepare for the fall. And so just kind of honing in on some of those seasonal systems, I would say, is what I'm kind of focused on right now, just to
like Phoenix, you can grow year round, 365, and you can here. It's just the seasonal changes are much harder. And so I honestly had a learning curve of like, No, it's really more of that you plant and you harvest. Like there is a growing season outside. Then we have a greenhouse, and obviously Ken just had the grow bed, well, one of the grow beds inside, but like, so that's all. It's about the season extensions also, and just listening, like she said, learning. And while we wanted to push forward the first, year and two, it's like also we've been in tandem observing, like really, really observing. But to honestly answer that question, not to like say she didn't, but like any of that stuff you're looking at, all the digital, unless they're long rants, that's me. But like the digital stuff, like she eloquently puts things together. She did our entire website. Like she makes me not be a hermit.
Yes, I'm the translator.
She helps tell our, she's the translator. There you go. She translates our story to people.
I translate wood nymph. If anyone wants to know how to speak wood nymph,
she
speaks
person. I speak plant and soil. So I am a people person, but like that's just it. Right? Like, I don't speak digital anything, and like so she does all the Instagram. And it's funny when I do one, she's like, all right. But that's how I want to plant something, right? She's like, can I just put it here? Like, dude, my little 3-gallon pot that I had the horizons going in, she's like, yeah, I just put this seed in. So she's like, I found this one pot in the greenhouse. It had like clay in the middle and like worms. I was like, fuck, cool. Glad it worked. Like, I was experimenting with that, but it's good. So, we do our own, and we crash into we crash each other's party sometimes.
Oh yeah, we're always learning. But yeah, different.
She's learning better than I am, though. I don't do
well,
digital.
it's in many ways you complete each other, and that's what I noticed when I met you guys, and we had you on that other podcast, which was again a beautiful story and summary of your two lives and the directions you're taking it, which is again what it's all about.
Yeah. So. Yes, we do, and we were certainly completed as well by our community and
the little thing.
Yes, and our kiddos and our dog, and we've just got all sorts of life everywhere. Super grateful.
Wow, she's getting big.
Yeah.
What are you feeding her? Obviously, good stuff.
Corn-fed beef. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. That was funny. The irony about I love Farmer Kyle because I've already talked to you about like getting acreage going in Nebraska, right? But like one person commented on that. They were like, "Are we talking about feeding corn to cows?" Yes, we are. But we all got to start somewhere,
Yep,
These are
absolutely.
Biologically grown corn fed to cows, son. You know what I mean? It's like, so that's cool. I thought that was a great episode, but it just goes to show it's like there is no perfect, man, and there's also no right and wrong. It's like when we operate in intrinsics, we get in trouble,
Agreed.
You just have to,
It's busy.
And I love the way you say there's no good or evil, and I'm a firm believer of that. There's all shades of it.
Well, there's imbalances, right?
Yeah, it's all important. I mean, how would you know if you did something right if there was nothing wrong to measure it by?
Yeah, exactly.
So what's down?
Different levels or imbalances or concentrations at times, right?
Yeah,
But no, most def, they're both needed. You can't have light without dark, and vice versa.
Agreed. 100%. Well, Ken, were there any questions that we wanted to jump into because we're almost pushing the 2-hour mark?
Yeah, thank you guys.
Well, we've actually got a couple. Let's see. Okay, what it's a boost. Now, you were talking about soaking your seeds. You were putting them in your mouth, and then you were using Kyle's formulation at his dilution rate before you planted the seeds.
That was Keith.
Keith, from Fish Brew. So like. I sent Leighton a really cool video talking about an enzyme, but like we won't go down enzymes right now, but like that's the short of it. Is amylase is an enzyme that your mouth is, saliva, right? Your mouth is amylase. So more than like the pH or any of the other like attributions that might come with saliva soaks. It's one of those like spiritual woo-woo, like, and I don't always do it. Like actually for the last couple years, as I've transitioned into regenerative, I've gotten away from my tried and true, which was like water, like a pure water or well water. I mean, but just not usually city water for me, with my cannabis seed specifically. And I would do like a little bit of H2O2, so hydrogen peroxide, to like sterilize the shell. And then I would do like a 12-hour soak or so in water, just straight water. And then I would put them in the baggie. Like I used to do that whole thing, right? In like day 3, they have a little tail. Before I did that, I would just do soil. But I didn't see the reliability in germination, especially as you get into better and better seeds. You're not, you're like, nah, dude, I need 100% of those things to pop, man. That was expensive pack. So you're always trying to find what works. But I went out on, I've used fish brew as contact solution. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. But like, I think it works for like everything. Like I'm literally amazed. And I have went back to soil just because I believe in the biointelligence of it. I don't really want to sterilize my seed coats with H2O2. Plus I don't need to waste peroxide. It's a whole other step. I have to like have different shot glasses of each variety out and what they are. And it's like, heaven forbid Aster comes in like, whoa, mystery crop going down, so like, I put them right where they go in their home. And they, but like I said, I'm serious. I did this 10 a.m. on Saturday. And I went in there this morning to mist the soil with fish brew, the fish brew solution. And I believe he said it's 25 mils to 100 mils for what we're talking about. His cloning was like a 1-to-1. And I'm like thinking, dude, I have a lot of clones I got to cut and I need like a 5-gallon bucket. I don't have that much fish brew, homie. And that's a lot of freaking money. So I won't be doing that. But I just took 2 clones actually. After all, I was planning something for a long while, but totally just went the other way with it and simplified my work. I took 2 clones. They look happy. I, plunged them in some aloe from the greenhouse. And I just put them in my, quote, biointelligent soil. And I've watered them with the fish brew dilution at 1-to-1. So kept it really moist. And they seem like they're going to go. I'll let you know in a couple of weeks or whatever, however long it takes. But I've never had cannabis seeds come out of soil from Saturday to Monday.
That's a beautiful thing.
Heck yeah. I mean, that little silver neck, it's like just coming out of the soil. It's like one of my favorite things to see. I'm like, it's like a purple silver, like I know exactly what that is.
Well, I'd love to add a little caveat to that is, I had a full-blown Native American uncle, Uncle Si. And when I was a little boy, he kind of took me under his wing. There was pretty much mostly daughters on his side of the family. And so for whatever reason, he, took me under his wing, taught me how to fish. And one of the things he talked about was the importance of putting anything you planted in your mouth first. For imprinting your intentions was the way that he got it. And later on in life, I ran into the understanding of horizontal gene transfer, which is basically when your RNA gets exposed to that seed's coding biology. And this is another thing that people really don't understand the importance of.
But I 100% believe it. The frequency thing, like I said with the dogs.
Right. You don't want to strip the biology off the outside of that seed. You want to leave everything intact.
Right.
And then I found the book Anastasia and the Singing Cedars. And she too talked about how important it is to soak that seed in your mouth before you plant it. So there's a lot more to that than
you've told me about this book series at one point in our conversation. I forget what we were talking about, but I remember you bringing it up. It's something we were talking about too. So
it gets deep really quick, but if you have an open mind and you allow yourself to really move through some of the thoughts and theories in this book, it's pretty fucking powerful. And it's yet to be proven that it isn't real. I'll tell you that.
Sure.
It's yet to be proven that it isn't real. So I'll leave it on that note. But go ahead, Ken. On to the next one.
Okay. We have Silly Lily. I referenced a book I got years ago from Rosemary Gladstone, Medical Herbs. Has your guest written a book on herbalism?
I referenced the book I got years from.
She was asking you, have you written a book yet, Josh? And no, he hasn't yet, but he is working on one.
It's funny, like, so again, you can be attest to it. Like I can comfortably say I'm a humble person, and almost too humble in some ways, where I do believe I can impart knowledge that, or experience, I can impart experiences that I believe help people. And all the time people ask me, have you written a book? Will you write a book? Have you done a podcast? Will you do this? And I'm like, do you want to be a stenographer for me? I mean, for real, follow me around for hours. I'm happy to just, you print the shit. It is often and all the time. And I've told you about our intern. I'm so blessed. This weekend, we have another intern through my herbalism teacher I told you about. She's now, so now we are here 12 years later or some change, and she's sending me interns. So I have a guy that comes up once a month, and he brought his wife because they're both passionate about what we're doing. And so, yeah, it's such an amazing.
Do you have any recommendations for herbalism books in addition to the one?
Oh, yeah. If you want recommendations for herbalism books, my absolute favorite herbalism book is called 300 Herbs, and it's by Matthew Alfs. Because it's written, it's a user-friendly approach. If I give it one critique, it has 0 pictures. So you just have to kind of know your plants, but you can Google it. It gives you the Latin binomial, which is incredibly important. To call something a common name is incredibly dangerous in herbalism, right? So like marigold. It's like, well, which marigold do you mean? French marigold or pot marigold? One is incredibly medicinal. The other is like a good garden plant. Like, they're both good garden plants, but French marigold and calendula are 2 different plants. So saying marigold is just going to confuse people, right? Calendula officinalis is a Latin binomial that refers to calendula alone. So yeah, 300 Herbs is my absolute favorite. Because the appendixes are amazing. There's a variety of appendixes, but especially if you have even a base knowledge of herbalism, it's the wealth. Like if my house is burning down, that's the book I would grab for herbs, right? I swear. And I mean, there's a few herb books behind us. There's like a half a dozen down on the shelf, and big hardy textbook herb books, but this little pocket one is the one. But as far as my herbal medicine cabinet, I know you didn't ask, but calendula is like my nature's neosporin. Lemon balm is because I have 2 kids, right? And I don't go to doctors often, so fevers included. Lemon balm is the fever reducer, headache herb that I go to. That's Melissa officinalis. I mean, those are pretty much my 2. I have some cough syrup formulas and stuff. It's a little too complicated for right here, but I'm happy to share them if people reach out. It's just, I'm blessed to still be an herbalist in a sense, even though it's not what I thought I was. And it like hit me in a weird way that I was like, oh, I guess I am, like this full circle 12 years later thing. I'm like, dude, you're doing it. I'm like, I am. Wow. So,
Totally cool.
Yeah, it's important to remind ourselves of stuff.
Did have another question come in, by the way.
What's up?
Anybody use pinto bean water after you soak the beans overnight as a seed soak?
I know it. I haven't, but I know what they're talking about with the bean aminos, right? Like again, I think that could be an enzyme process too, but I think it's generally the proteins are what people respond for it. But since if you have Instagram, I'll plug a dude, Hogan's Farm, and I think it's Hogan's Farm 2.0 maybe at this point. You know how Instagram is, but Hogan's Farm. So you guys know I do avocado tech. I've told you, and I'm not religious about avocado tech. I know that's just what it's called, but also if you listen to Tyler and listen to Blue, he's not either. It's just about the concepts again of like when you amend. This is a great way. You have worms, blah blah blah. But anyway. The only other guy that I saw before I started doing all this was the Hogan's Farm guy, where he's got a bunch of worms, and he does something that he calls MB2 tech, which is mung bean and malted barley. So that's MB squared 2 tech, where he does the sprouted mung beans and the malted barley. And I know it is a serious hormone boost or enzyme boost. So I can't speak too deep on it. I know there's a lot going on with the bean stuff. I haven't done it personally. And I haven't even done avocados this time. I just chop and drop and get the cover crop going. I do it if I see I need something. And also if you want to trigger something in a plant, you can load amendments that might have a certain response in the soil. Or if you want to load up on potassium, you can amend that avocado heavily with potassium or something like that. But the Hogan's Farm dude's doing stuff with bean tech, and like I always admire his garden. It looks great. He's in a grassroots 4x4, so really comparable. As far as I know, he's not doing horizontal, but all the same, he's on blue mats also. That's important. So
yeah, I know there's a lot to bean sprouts. I don't know if you're talking about pinto bean sprouts as a seed starter or just taking pinto beans and soaking them in a jar. So I think if he could expand on that, we could go a little bit deeper.
I read it as like the water was the soak,
right.
like the bean soaked water. Like he was going to eat pintos, and so he took the water from the pintos and soaked in it. That's
the way I took it as well.
But I don't know if that's quite the same thing as I don't know. I honestly don't know. Try it, right? You got to just try some side-by-sides.
Right.
Do some right? Yeah, exactly. Do some mung beans, but hit that bulk bin, right? You got the bulk bin. It's like those sprout. I know they do. I've sprouted all sorts of bulk bin stuff. That was a COVID exercise we did. It's like, cool. You got food all around you, man. But anyway, it's for you guys. Not that I care, but I just want to be responsible. And like, if there's questions for sure, let's answer them. But I don't want to keep lagging, bro. I can.
I think what we're going to have to do is actually have you guys, now that you've introduced yourself to the audience, is have you guys back on to actually talk a lot more in depth. And that's where I'm sorry Ab missed today, because I think he would have added a lot to the conversation.
Sure. I mean, I would always be happy to be back anytime. But yeah, I hope Ab feels better for sure, at least more sooner than later.
Yeah, agreed. It was tough missing him today, but life happens, right? So you just let it go. But we'll definitely have you guys back on, I'm sure, in the near future. Especially after maybe just before harvest. When you're somewhat relaxed down, you've gotten through the hard part of the summer, but you're waiting for the harvest to push. So
yeah,
I appreciate your time, Josh, and Jillian. Love you, girl. Thank you for everything you've done, and especially for taking care of him.
My favorite job. Love you. So good to see both of you. Have a great rest of the day.
Do you guys have anything coming up? Like, are there any courses coming up or anything like that you guys could talk about before you jump?
We've got I do some the childbirth classes in the area, but Josh we'll be adding a cannabis course pretty soon. So stay tuned. We just need to get
our parking underway with the
creek.
We've
got to figure out our logistics. But yes, so if you're in the area and you're definitely check out our page under the tab classes, and then of course under grow you can always send us a message and Josh will come to where you are and check out your spot and help you work through your garden goals. So yeah, thank you, Ken. We'll keep updating that classes page.
So
and don't forget about the Airbnb.
Yes, stay with us. Summer is great.
We love to have like-minded folk for sure. We love to have everybody, but definitely soil nerds.
And I can attest that place is amazing, and they take such good care of it, and it's just a beautiful experience. So highly encourage people to go up there and take a visit.
Thank you, Leighton, for sure, and appreciate your magical work, Ken.
Thank you, and we'll definitely have you guys back on. And with that, guys in the chat, thank you very much. Share, comment, subscribe. We love you all. And I'm going to hit the end button because I think the kid needs to be attended to by the